Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you've just joined us, thanks for joining us here. We're just going to get started in a few minutes. We're setting things up here with the stream, and we're also waiting for people to join. So, in about 5 or 6 minutes, we'll get started. Thanks again for joining us. Hey, Bill, can you just say something for a moment? I just want to double check that the stream's working. Hey, Bill, can you just say something for a moment? I just want to double check that the stream's working. Hey, Bill, can you just say something for a moment? I just want to double check that the stream's working. Hey, Bill, can you just say something for a moment? I just want to double check that the stream's working. We're good. I'm just troubleshooting one thing here.
Something. No worries. Okay. Cool. Thanks, John. Good morning and afternoon, everybody. Definitely thank you for joining the Ribbon Federal Summit. Typically, we like to do these in person when possible here in the DC area. Circumstances right now, obviously, kind of preclude that. So we're going to do just an hour overview today about some up and coming things from Ribbon to introduce our partners and our customers. And we've got several guest speakers here that we'll get into in a second here. But overall, we wanted to keep this somewhat short and sweet, but make sure you had some succinct information. I'm sure everybody has some Microsoft Teams or other sort of collaboration tools fatigue, just because that's what we're primarily doing every day. But it is a great method to communicate. We're actually going to talk about that. It's really enabled a lot of really fantastic things in the federal space. So I'm going to start off an interview of John Marcy, who's president and CEO of NetMaker Communications. He's got some direct experience in what the U.S. government is dealing with in these interesting times. Then we'll go to Doug Dederick with Microsoft. He's going to talk about direct routing. We'll do Packet Optical Insights with Sam Lyle. Switch to our Ribbon Tactical solution, and then close things out here at about 2 o'clock. So some quick hits. This will be recorded for those who want to look at this later, and certainly for the audience here looking at attendees, some of you are familiar with Ribbon, some are not, but we are happy to have extensive conversations and go into a lot more detail as needed after that. So the speakers here we're talking to, Doug Dederick works primarily with the U.S. government from a Microsoft perspective, especially Teams. Sam Lyle joins us from one of our acquisitions. As Director of Business Development, he's going to talk Packet Optical. John LaForge works closely with me and my team. He's my principal architect and engineer. And then Bob Smolin, who doesn't have a presence in this particular presentation, but seeing all the partners on board that and love Bob for all the work that he does. So, and he's definitely the point of contact for our partners. So, given the audience, I wanted to have just a couple quick minutes and talk about Ribbon, just to make sure we know who we are. We've had several name changes over the years, but we're a global provider of converged networking and communication solutions. So we're pretty large now via acquisition, about 4,000 employees, closing in on about $1 billion of revenue. It's been actually a very good year for us. And we definitely lead in several markets that we operate in, such as our session border controllers and 5G packet optical technology. But you might recognize some of the names here: Sonos from an SBC perspective, Genband from a SIP PBX application server perspective. We are the successor to a lot of the carrier class Nortel technologies. We rebranded in 2017 to Ribbon Technologies, and then we purchased Edgewater, Anova, and then most recently ECI for packet optical. The spaces we operate in, again, optical and packet networking, data center interconnect and private optical networks, intelligent edge for cloud communications, analytics. Teams migration has become a very, very hot topic for conversation with partners and customers lately. Unified communication, security and session management, integrated defense infrastructure with analytics and security, and then cloud has been a very, very major component as well. But we really operate in a number of different theaters: utility, transportation, education, finance, government, and defense. But you really find us, the name may not be as well recognized, but we are deployed in all the major carriers worldwide, some of the largest banks and airlines, and then we have some pretty heavy presence here in the U.S. federal government presence as well. Just wanted to say here, some of the areas we operate, we're in all the commands, several large civilian agencies, IRS, Department of Transportation, Social Security, U.S. Senate, and the like. And for those of you familiar with the Nortel CS2100 and SL100 solutions, they've been around for quite some time. There's still a number that are still in operation, especially in the DoD, and we are the owner of that technology. There was a split with us and Avaya a number of years ago, and they took more of the enterprise and we took the carrier class. But just from a very high level perspective, we really operate from the edge to the core and everywhere in between. And that's where the packet optical that Sam will talk about, that kind of fills out kind of our core networking components here. So not as well known, but you will hear a lot more from us as we continue to grow and thrive within the space, especially in the U.S. federal space. So I wanted to kind of shift gears rather than speaking at you. I wanted to bring someone who is a lot smarter than me when it comes to the federal government and some of the challenges they're facing, and introduce everybody to Mr. John Marcy. John, how are you? Good to talk to you again.
How are you?
I'd like to start, if we could, maybe if you can just give a minute or so on NetMaker Communications and what your company does.
Sure. So we're a veteran-owned small business that's a registered CLEC here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we've basically got a commercial practice and a federal practice. For this group, we'll focus on the federal side. So we're providing basically systems engineering, technical assistance type consulting work for the DoD, specifically the Defense Information Systems Agency, and most recently here with the DoD CIO office, with the Navy as well, and to some extent the Army. So our focus relative to the consulting practice is really in the area of unified communications. So we're providing a lot of the technical background work, if you will, for their transition planning from legacy TDM to IP in the telephony space.
Well, I'm sure those topics have been very interesting conversations over the past couple of months. But I guess, the first question I have for you is, how has your business fared during COVID? I mean, some businesses have done very well, some have really struggled. The government has struggled, but seems to be adapting. How has your particular business been affected?
We've had a really good year, honestly. I think a lot of it due to the fact that a lot of our commercial customers had to pivot to telework. So you've had a number of staff positions that had to learn how to work from home, and the UC solutions we put in commercially support that, but hadn't been till now activated or well exercised, if you will. So the month of April was crazy because we were working nonstop, coaching our customers through that transition process. Really no different than the federal government, because they likewise were moving in that same direction, right? So now I think towards the end of May, early June, it's kind of planed out, because I think that transition has transpired, and everybody's kind of adopting to a new operational tempo.
I think what a lot of the audience would like to hear is, and especially, a lot of your focus is DoD, but I think that the government in general, I mean, what were the primary challenges they're dealing with? You talked about some of the challenges of teleworking, but can you get into specifics of, what are the struggles that they were looking to overcome, especially in the early days?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge for the Department of Defense, and to some extent Homeland Security, experienced similar challenges, as did the State Department, is that their usual course of operations is in a government building on a dedicated government network with no outside access, right? So as you pivot to telework, well, now all of your employees are working from home, and their only source of network access is the commercial internet. The commercial internet doesn't have a carte blanche access to DoD networks at all, never mind Homeland Security or State Department networks. So they were really required with their laptops to depend on VPN technology, but in a normal state of business, their VPN licensing, their gateways were all sized to a specific size to meet that non-crisis work tempo. If you flip that and now 90% or 80% of your staff is now teleworking, they found themselves stuck because they didn't have enough licenses to support the VPN demand that was coming on board. And internally, as far as the back office infrastructure, they still had continued challenges in supporting that telework ecosystem.
Do you feel now that they've, kind of solved those challenges, or they're still an ongoing challenge?
I think for some it's ongoing, but for the most part, most of it has been planed out. So there was massive lifts at the CIO level and down for a multitude of agencies to get money, and a lot of it came through the CARES relief funds that were awarded by the government, by Congress, basically, to funnel into existing contracts to either increase bandwidth or licensing, specifically on a variety of VPN platforms, or coming up with new ways of doing business. For example, with the Department of Defense, they cut a deal with Microsoft to stand up the platform I'm talking to you on today, the CVR platform, for the DoD users that are working from home to be able to access a collaboration medium over the commercial internet that they have from home. So, even though this is a temporary solution, at some point everybody's going to go back to work, but people are becoming accustomed now to getting their job done on platforms like the one we're using today.
Right. So I guess what a lot of the audience here would be interested in understanding, at least from your perspective, what does the future hold for government acquisitions and IT strategies? That a lot of the work been done to get through the current mode, but eventually we'll get to a point where things get back to quote unquote normal operations. How does this affect kind of future direction for the government for IT?
I don't think we're going back. I think that's the other challenge in all of this, is that the days of the government filling up and leasing buildings and filling them up with government and contractors, I think those days are done. I think honestly, the level of productivity hasn't gone down. It's actually gone up with people teleworking. And, several years ago, there was the myth or fear, if you will, with supervisors that, they just couldn't get on board with telework because of the fear that the productivity of their staff was going to go down. Well, COVID has proven that to be a fallacy. Productivity has actually gone up significantly. So I think going forward, we're going to see not everybody going back to a said cubicle in some government building someplace. Now, with that said, we still have to look at how do you support that larger population of teleworkers, or the nomadic user. And one of the things that is emerging within the federal space is the desire to adopt zero trust architectures within their IT frameworks. And I think that's at least for the next 24 to 36 months, where most of the agencies are going to put a lot of focus, primarily for the fact that for authenticating, you're basically saying, I don't care if you're on the internet or you're on the corporate network, I'm going to regard both as untrusted. I'm going to authenticate you based on your identity, and I'm going to set some kind of policy-based rules to say what applications or data you get to access based on your identity. That's what zero trust is all about. So I think that's really what we're going to see in the next 24 to 36 months as far as the federal government's focus.
Excellent. We've definitely been hearing a lot of that. And I think NIST just released a zero trust kind of a white paper outlining kind of their framework and approach. So I highly recommend the audience to go take a look at that. And certainly come to us if you have trouble finding it, we can send it along. But I think it gives a good roadmap for zero trust. But that actually is a very good kind of segue to, what would you see based upon some of that, kind of permanent change in working beyond zero trust? Any other specific technology areas you see the government maybe prioritizing that weren't before?
I think investments in platforms like this one, you're going to see a lot more of. The days of people or, agencies in the federal space owning and operating, legacy technologies that could not be exercised in this type of environment is going to fade away, right? So I can't tell you the number of meetings I have with the Department of Defense using Microsoft Teams on the CVR platform consumes anywhere from 4 to 6 hours of my day. It's so, between answering emails and sitting on Teams calls, it takes up the entire week. And I know DoD is not alone. I know this is equally being leveraged, within Homeland Security, State Department, and others that are in the same boat. So I think, looking out to the next 36 months, integrating, this new emerging type capability set, which we've historically referred to as UC as a service, in a way that is secure and reliable, and then integrating that into my legacy environment is going to be where I think you're going to find most of the focus over the next 36 months.
Perfect. That's excellent. We could talk all day on a lot of this stuff, but I know we don't have a ton of time. But I think maybe one of the most relevant questions, knowing our audience is primarily, resellers and prime contractors for the federal government. I guess what kind of sales strategies and tactics could they adopt in terms of going after these and other, kind of new areas that maybe weren't as prevalent before?
So I've got a couple of ones that come to mind. One is in the space of Internet of Things. So when you start looking at 5G adoption, 5G is not just the evolution of 4G, where you're going to have a fancier smartphone. A lot of the promise of 5G, and especially what the DoD is looking at, is the ability to support the next generation of security sensors and alarm panels and stuff to that effect that will use the 5G spectrum to communicate, right? So in that space, the DoD just awarded several, say, pilot type contracts to explore 5G in the DoD environment. So I think that's going to be, one that is going to get a lot of attention, and you're going to see CPE manufacturers focusing on that space, as we kind of ascertain how we're going to prosecute the 5G capability, within the ecosystem. Right. IoT as the next generation for taking over some of those legacy platforms. I mentioned alarm panels. How many organizations have dial-up enabled panels for fire alarms and burglar alarms is mind-boggling. And as we terminate those PBXs, and as TDM dial-up circuits fade away, they all have to be enhanced or replaced with an IP-enabled IoT platform, right? So I think that's one area that warrants some attention. I think lastly, in that same vein, is when you're integrating a legacy environment into the IP space, is coming up with that hybrid approach, right? So if I have an installation or a campus environment, I still have elevator phones. I still have warehouses with phones. I've still got, as I said, some of these legacy dial-up platforms. You're still going to have a need to support those for the foreseeable future, but how do you integrate that into the UC as a service ecosystem in such a way that is, I won't say seamless, but at least manageable, right? So where you have situational awareness of your entire ecosystem. I think lastly is also in the space of adoption of next generation 911. So as we move into next generation 911, that doesn't operate like legacy 911. We have to start looking at, as an industry, how we enable location-based routing for 911 calls within my environment. And I think that's going to be the next big thing, because there's so much attention at the federal level right now with getting legacy TDM off of T911, E911 technologies to an all SIP-based IP solution, which is next gen 911, and all of the IoT stuff that goes into that, and the integration with FirstNet. That's another component.
Right. So it sounds like, in summary, the focus on the real hot buttons that the government has, and maybe look at ways at bridging some of those environments, because it's very difficult to forklift out, right? They've got our partners and our customers have to look at a way to still blend the old with the new as they try to get fully to the new way of doing things. It's just going to take some time.
Yep. And a lot of smart people.
Yep, exactly. Well, like I said, I could talk with you all day, because these are very interesting topics for me personally, but I know we don't have a lot of time, but John, very much grateful for your time and help here, and look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. So thank you.
You bet. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. All right, so in the interest of keeping on time and keeping things interesting for everybody, we're going to shift gears and have a little bit deeper dive into Microsoft Teams, specifically direct routing, which is really the capability of communicating between the telephony networks and the Teams environment to enable that kind of functionality. And we're very fortunate here to have Doug Dederick, who is a chief architect for Microsoft, primarily focused on federal, I believe, if that's correct, Doug. Doug, are you muted? I can't hear you. Unfortunately, I can't hear you, Doug. I'm sorry. We know it was working earlier, so I apologize, everybody. Why don't we get things fixed here? The standard video approach lately, right? Apologies, everybody. We'll be right back with you. I guess probably not an unknown problem for a lot of us who spend, like John Marcy said, most of our days on these types of environments.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies, everyone. We're just fixing that in the moment. But we will also have a replay of this available for those that might have to depart early or want to rewatch this again. We'll have that available for you. So we'll just give a moment for Doug Dederick to come back. There you go. Doug, you there?
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
perfect.
there we go.
Absolutely.
Sorry, apologies for
Minor
that.
glitch. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Doug, for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Doug Dietrich, Principal Technical Specialist inside of Microsoft Federal. And I'm here to talk to you today about how calling can be made simple by using Microsoft Teams. So in today's work environment, I don't think anyone can deny that staying connected in real time is essential. With so many of our customers working from home, right, it's important that it's more important than ever to be able to reach them wherever they are. And as our federal customers look to modernize and adapt to the changing workplace and landscape, more and more customers are looking at how Microsoft Teams can provide a single collaboration solution for their users. So Microsoft is and has been a trusted leader in the unified communication space for a number of years. To give you an idea of scale, we've seen usage in excess of 200 million meeting users in a single day. There are active direct routing deployments in over 94 countries, and we're leaders in both Gartner's UC as a Service Magic Quadrant, as well as Forrester Wave's Unified Communications Unified Communications as a Service report. And you can see, some of the cost reductions and some of the stats here from that Forrester report. So, what is calling made simple, right? What we're really talking about here is a high quality phone system, which is the transition of hardware from on-premise into the cloud. We have Microsoft calling plans, which provides dial tone from Microsoft, or you can bring your own PSTN connectivity, which we refer to in the product as direct routing. All these things come together inside the cloud so that you have the scalability and reliability of the entire Microsoft network backing your deployment. So how do we make calling simple? Well, it really comes down to 4 key areas. First, we provide an all-in-one solution. Microsoft Teams provides many different workloads across a wide variety of areas. Microsoft Teams provides things like chat with collaborative spaces, file sharing, meetings, and of course, calling. And when you bring them all together, you get unique integration value where you work seamlessly in concert to provide a great collaboration experience. And when you get into calling itself, it works anywhere from any device. And that's important because the future of work is going to be hybrid. We need to include features to help customers work wherever they're located. And in this modern world that we have today, with people working from home, you're able to stay connected and have a single primary phone number assigned to your user that will follow you wherever you are with your Teams client. And Microsoft Teams gives the users the ability to use that Teams client on a variety of different devices to make and receive phone calls wherever it's convenient for them. And that's really the end user experience. Now, from an enterprise experience, you're going to want to have rich calling features, and you're going to want to streamline the setup and management for those users. And all of the calling configuration is managed with the same tools used to control all the other parts of Microsoft 365. And Microsoft 365, of course, provides a robust set of identity, security, and compliance features that Microsoft Teams and customers can take advantage of. So if we look at the pieces that make up calling inside of Microsoft Teams, the core piece is phone system. It's the feature that enables all of the PBX features that you would expect, right? That's things like call forwarding, simultaneous ring, things like blind and consultative transfer, boss admin, and many more. So then the next piece of this puzzle is dial tone. And what we're really talking about here is minutes, right? How do you get minutes into Microsoft Teams so that your users can make and receive calls? And you really have two choices. All right, the first option is Microsoft calling plans, which are essentially a first-party offering that allows you to get minutes directly from Microsoft. The other option is direct routing, and which, as I mentioned, is using your own existing PSTN connections and connecting that up to Microsoft Teams so that your users can utilize all the benefits that we discussed with the Teams client while still making use of those existing telephony contracts that they might have. And you can think of direct routing as essentially SIP trunking. So if we look at the direct routing piece in a little bit more detail, right, this option allows you to have a fine-tuned granular control of your phone system, right? The key to direct routing is using a Microsoft Teams certified session border controller to handle that connectivity between the Microsoft Teams environment and your existing PSTN connections. You create a SIP trunk from the SBC to the Microsoft Teams environment, and both signaling and media are encrypted so that your calls in Teams are secure. This allows you to connect Microsoft Teams to a wide variety of existing PBXs or PSTN providers. It also simplifies transitioning from an existing PBX to Microsoft Teams because you can gradually migrate users from one environment to the other while maintaining interoperability between the two systems. Direct routing also means that you won't have to port your existing phone numbers in order to use them with your users in Microsoft Teams. And lastly, you can continue to use existing systems, things like analog devices or fax services and others that rely on those existing PSTN connections that you have in place today. Now, we've had a lot of interest and conversations with federal customers about what a direct routing migration would look like for them. And we continue to expect to see federal customers looking for ways to increase flexibility and productivity of their users while continuing to provide experiences tailored for this new hybrid workplace. So as we discussed, Microsoft Teams allows you to leverage your existing PSTN investments and transition to a voice solution powered by Microsoft Teams, all while consolidating configuration, reporting, and troubleshooting into a single set of tools. And it allows you to scale to meet the needs of your customers and users wherever they are. So with that, I'll say thank you for your time today, and I'll hand it back to Bill.
And Doug, I apologize deeply for mispronouncing your last name. It won't happen again.
Not a problem.
So, but thank you very much. Excellent information. I know that's just a brief clip. We could talk a lot deeper about some of the intricacies, but it really does make things easier. And I would say half or more of the conversations that my team is having here at Ribbon is related specifically to Microsoft and direct routing. That's how much it's on everybody's minds right now as they transition to a telework stance. I'll also point real quickly too, before I move over to Sam, that SAIC just published a white paper on telework. Pretty brief, easy to consume. It's only about 3 pages long, but in effect, in terms of their polling of federal agencies, see almost a permanent move from an average of 1 to 2 days of teleworking to 3 to 4, which is going to fundamentally change the way a lot of these agencies are interworking, and the enabling tools like Teams is what's allowing that to happen. So, very interesting shift as a result of unfortunately, of COVID. All right, so I'm going to shift gears into a different direction. Sam Lyle joined us here just a few months back with our acquisition of ECI. ECI is about a 30-year-old company focused on packet and optical solutions. And so he's going to take us through just a brief overview of those packet optical solutions and why they're important to RIP. So Sam, take it away.
Great, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Let me bring up some slides here for everyone. It's good to see everybody. I am Sam Lyle, and I'm responsible for network architectures and solutions for all things packet and optical for ribbon in North America, and I hail from Dallas, Texas. So I'll beg you ahead of time, those of you who in the audience may be from the Washington, D.C. area, please don't give me a hard time during the Q&A about my beloved Dallas Cowboys now bringing up third place in the NFC East. So what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes is give you an idea about what Ribbon does for Ethernet, IP, and optical solutions in general, kind of our overall portfolio, and then drill down on a couple use cases of interest that'll be important in the federal space. Ribbon has not been a household name when it comes to packet and optical. Ribbon has been focused on voice and real-time communications, but as Bill mentioned, there was a merger this year with a company called ECI Telecom back in March. ECI Telecom has been a longtime provider of a very full line of ROADM, OTN, Ethernet, and IP platforms that have been very significantly deployed actually around the world. We have over 18,000 optical nodes deployed, 70,000 Ethernet and IP nodes. These nodes serve everything from kind of wavelength solutions to Ethernet and MPLS VPN kind of solutions to mobile backhaul, pretty much anything you'd ever want to do for transport. In particular for this audience, we have dozens of military and defense networks around the world because we've got some special capabilities that folks love to take advantage of. Now with the Ribbon acquisition, we are publicly traded on the NASDAQ, headquartered here in the US with US manufacturing capability. We follow a very distinctive approach to transport, and some of that is summarized here in this slide. Just a few things we do. We have very optimized packaging for our solutions. Lots of times, transport equipment is getting deeper and wider as the bandwidth needs go up, but all of our solutions are actually 12 inches deep versus 18 to 24 inches, so you can kind of deploy them anywhere you need to. We have some solutions that occupy probably an industry-leading small footprint and form factor. Everything we do is low power. Much of what we do is redundant and hardened. So the idea is you can take our solutions and pretty much deploy them anywhere. We have solutions across all layers and capacities, from wavelength to OTN to layer 2 to layer 3 to MPLS, which is halfway in between. And in particular, one of the things we focus on that makes us valuable to particular defense and military customers around the world is we specialize in deterministic and secure forms of transport at the different layers. Obviously, OTN and wavelength transport is inherently deterministic and secure, but we do some things at the packet layer in that regard as well. For instance, MPLS TP or MPLS transport profile, a variant of MPLS, is very useful for deterministic transport of packet networking traffic. Makes kind of MPLS connections look like and operate like sonic connections, but you get the benefits of packet networking. We have many deployments that use that technology. We have another technology called FlexE or G.MTN that can be used to construct hard pipes in a packet network, actually TDM pipes inside a packet environment. It's a little unusual. That has many unique applications, which folks like to take advantage of. We do a number of things with encryption, both layer 2, layer 1 encryption. In fact, we are kind of a leader in post-quantum cryptography. I can't say that. Post-quantum cryptography solutions for layer 1. And finally, we do what I would call a just right amount of packet and optical integration. A few years ago, there was this idea of kind of creating like a God box where all the packet stuff and all the optical stuff sort of lived in one chassis. That's maybe okay in some cases, but what we've done is we've taken just a little bit of optical and put in our packet line, and just a little bit of packet capabilities and put in the optical line. And there's some unusual, very cost-effective things you can do by cross-pollinating just that little bit. The portfolio itself, we have 3 brands. Apollo is the name of our optical portfolio brand. We have industry-leading micro ROADMs as well as large scale ROADMs as well. We have industry leading compact OTN solutions as well as large scale OTN solutions as well. And we're also on the cutting edge of high-speed wavelength transport. Actually, a year ago, we announced 600 gig and beyond wavelength transmission. We're going to be increasing that as the years come. And one of the next things we're rolling out is a very cost-effective 400 gig wavelength capability, which has kind of got some breakthrough cost points. On the Neptune side, that is our packet, Ethernet and IP brand. We have, again, very compact, very high capacity Ethernet and IP aggregation solutions. That's where a lot of this deterministic transport capability comes into play. And in particular, we've done some interesting things to make backhaul networks ready for 5G. So if you're looking at like a 5G private wireless network for your installation and you need to do some backhaul of that, there's going to be some special things that you're going to need to do in backhaul that, 4G based backhaul just isn't going to be good enough. So that's in the Neptune line. Then we tie it all together with our Muse layer 0 through 3 SDN control and orchestration platform. So just a couple specific applications while we have a few minutes left. Seeing a very big trend these days for end users wanting OTN-based layer 1 private line services. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, the capacity needs are growing wildly as people need not just 1 gig anymore, but they're starting to need 10 gig. And the minute you need a little bit higher capacity, you may want something that's more granular than a wavelength, but maybe Ethernet isn't quite giving you the capacity that you might need. So it's a really good capacity, kind of a sweet spot, and it gives you the security of a wavelength with more granular bandwidth. It's bit transparent. You can do some very sophisticated encryption capabilities. It's highly reliable and resilient. We've got customers who deploy our OTN solutions because it's not good enough just to protect their service from one failure. They actually have to protect their traffic from multiple simultaneous failures. OTN using ASON technology, it's called, is very, very good at that. It's guaranteed performance. There's no crying in baseball, and there's no packet loss in OTN, and there's very little latency. And operationally, it's very easy to turn up OTN connections. You don't have the complexity of some types of wavelength approaches, and you don't have the complexity of some types of Ethernet and IP approaches. So there's lots of reasons why people want this. One of the inhibitors has been the cost and size of these types of networking solutions. And that's where we've made some innovations, even just in the last year or so. We have some very compact OTN solutions that are getting a lot of play around the world in the federal space, actually. Now, there's two of them. One is what I'll call a flexible OTN appliance. It's not just a mux or a switch, it does more. It's one rack unit, and that's called our Apollo 9901. You could build a 10 gig ring, a 100 gig ring, an ADM, kind of whatever you need, and you home that into a larger device called an Apollo 9904. That's only 5 rack units, and that is a fabric-free OTN switch. So instead of a piece of gigantic iron like here these big switches traditionally have been, the fabric-free switch has all its switching fabric actually on the line cards, so you can have a much lower startup point and scales very gracefully in terms of cost. So that's a very simple approach to networking, very popular with folks around the world. The other problem I'm seeing very regularly, I talk to a couple of customers a week, service providers, cable companies, pretty much everybody. All the sonnet stuff out there is dying, and that's causing folks tremendous grief and heartbreak and difficulties with sparing. And so people need to get off that sonnet equipment, but they need to deliver the DS1s and the DS3 endpoints that somehow just won't go away. And there's actually a whole range of applications that folks have, from voice trunking to data services to all kinds of things. And we have very innovative solutions in that area as well. And this leverages our MPLS TP capability for deterministic transport. We have a whole product family of Neptune boxes in different shapes and sizes and capacities, depending upon your need. And into those platforms that all run with the same operating system, you can put different circuit emulation cards to pick up DS1s, DS3s, or Sonnet circuits, convert them to MPLS, and get off the at-risk SONET network, if you will. Our solution is very, very different from some other things on the market. There is the brand X that I'm showing here, where there's another solution that's out there with a couple different sizes, different product families, different software and hardware, and not very good at the in-between space. And you can see our stuff scales from things that are small to things that are large with a common set of hardware and software. So that's just a quick flyby. We do a lot more. We're trusted by military and defense organizations around the world, secure and deterministic transport solutions. We talked about our breakthrough OTN and TDM transformation solutions today, but we'd love to talk with you about those or more things such as our 5 gig fixed and mobile transport, layer 2, layer 3 VPN solutions, high capacity wavelength solutions, or terabit OTN and packet switching. So anyway, thanks for your attention, and Bill, I will turn this back to you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Excellent presentation. I know it was very bite-sized because of the time that we have, but definitely wanted to at least expose some of our partners, both existing and potential, to the Packet Optical. We're very excited about that. We are currently taking that through FIPS certification. We're hoping that will be out of NIST here momentarily, and then we are working actively on JITC certification as well for the federal government. So it's definitely imminent, and we wanted to make sure that some of our partners are aware of the capabilities, and it's definitely got a lot of interest from some of our federal customers to talk in more detail. So thank you again, Sam.
Sure, there you go.
All right, so I wanted to shift gears, certainly not last, but certainly not least, for Mr. John LaForge, who I work very closely with on a daily basis here at Ribbon. The solution he's going to talk about is called our tactical solution, which is really kind of a reworking of some existing capability with our session border controllers and our SIP PBX application server. The initial ideation for that came from the defense industry, but I think it's got legs for a number of different applications throughout the federal government and commercial as well. So that being said, John, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you great.
Okay, very good. All right, let me switch to sharing this. Let me get to... And let me kick off my slideshow. Can you see that?
Looks great.
Good, very good. All right, my name is John LaForge, and as Bill has introduced me on 2 separate occasions on this call, I'm the principal systems engineer and architect for our Ribbon Federal Group. I'm going to kick right off into our Ribbon Tactical Solution. This is not a new direction for Ribbon, but we have a new application of our existing portfolio. So these are products that we have in place that we have sized and created into a solution space to take into the tactical market space. The primary concept that we work from is called Service Anywhere. It's the ability for a user or a kit or a subscriber set to be able to connect into a core network, if you will, from anywhere in that overall core network and make and receive calls and have a constant and deterministic user profile or system profile. Again, this is the concept. It's based on elements like database and shared database infrastructure. The next element is the tactical core. The tactical core is that distributed subscriber database that sits on several application server database infrastructures regionally or geographically separated. The third element is the deployable kit type element, our tactical edge. This is purpose size. This runs on a very small 6 vCPU footprint. It is an SBC and a full SIP PBX that'll run on some of the smallest tactical platforms, PacStar, CLOS, DTEC, to just name a few. The tactical core and edge environment elements, as they would typically be laid out, is the tactical core would live in a data center-like environment, one of up to 14 of these locations that could be regionally or globally or geographically distributed. They are made up of a full-size, full-scale AS that is interconnected via the tactical core distributed database environment. So you make add moves and changes to a single location, it gets propagated to the rest of the network. This gives you the behavior much like the cell phone technology today, that no matter where you go in the world, your cell phone just works. This is the idea of wherever you go in the world, you plug in your SIP phone or you connect to a SIP phone. You don't have to bring your SIP phone. You connect via a SIP phone or through a cellular connection as an application on a cell phone through Wi-Fi, and you will have your user profile and your user behavior that you had wherever you sit on a regular basis. That's the example I use for the nomadic user. This would be an individual that travels around the world. Wherever he plugs in and connects, he gets his user profile and standard behavior. The tactical edge, as I mentioned before, is a smaller scale footprint that would reside in something like a deployable kit that could be flown out of the back of a C-130, dropped into a location, battlefield environment. The exciting part about this, you take that kit and you put it in one battlefield location this week, the mission's over, you ship that kit to the next battlefield environment, you plug it in and it works. Those same users, those same connectivity points all just work. The tactical core. So the tactical core is designed to, you add subscriber name information, credential information, telephone number, profile reference, things that define that subscriber's profile and user and connectivity. Subscriber data is added to the core database, and the database then updates. It's shared across the core. The subscriber logs into the core, the data profile is sent back to the phone, and now that user has the same profile he had wherever he sits. For example, if the user's in the Pentagon and that's his normal job position function, he travels downrange somewhere, he gets into a tent and they say, sir, log into that phone. When he logs into that phone and connects into that tactical core as a nomadic user, that phone will have the same behaviors as his phone on his Pentagon desk. And calls that enter that network anywhere will find him no matter where he is. So simple premise, call comes to the network. The subscriber registration for the original location is looked up because it's shared data. The call is forwarded to where the local registration takes place. The subscriber is found locally and the call is routed to that phone. So it becomes a local call at that destination point. The tactical edge, based on the deployable kit platform environment. Again, it's a micro application server, micro AS, and a micro SBC. It supports up to 100 subscribers. This is really built around the concept of the deployable kit. Typically, these kits are deployed where you'll have positional phones. You'll have phone 1, 2, 3, 4, X, and each one of those has a specific user position. For example, the team logician may be in position 1. The medic might be position 2. Perhaps arms and tactics or team leader will be in position 3. The way these kits are programmed is when this kit goes downrange, if somebody somewhere in that organization wants to call the team logician for kit 1, they dial that phone number, that phone rings regardless of the individual that's actually holding that position. So the phone number is actually dedicated to a kit position. When the system comes online, the SBC registers those phone numbers, those DNs, up into the cloud, if you will, the core data center. The information, then the subscriber data, is shared across the core. So now the entire core knows where that kit is based on DNs, or when I say where it is, how to route calls to and from it. So call comes into the core for position 1. It goes to wherever the first location it hits. That location table is looked up, checked, and says, oh, this phone kit is actually registered to another location. The local registrars looked up and said, yes, I have that kit in present, and the call is sent down to that kit. That's how the tactical edge then finds those users. That's it. Fairly quick. Bill, back to you.
And perfectly on time. I definitely appreciate that, John. That's it's pretty exciting, and the reception we've already received from certain commands has been very promising in terms of the capabilities here. I think the statement is that it far exceeds the capabilities of existing vendors for that. So we're in active development on that and looking for some time mid next year for full deployment. The Edge will be available here pretty shortly. On the core, we're doing some additional development and, of course, taking our products through JITC certification as well, since this is a bit of a change in that architecture. So very excited about that one. So we find ourselves with a couple extra minutes, so we can give some time back. We do have, John, some breakout sessions after this that people can go to for more specific questions. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct, Bill. Thanks. I just want to share my screen quick to show where everyone's going to go for that. So for everyone here that is using the Ribbon Federal Summit platform, what we have is on the left-hand bar, there's a item called, or button called virtual networking. So all you have to do is click on virtual networking once we finish this call here, and then you can just click on one of our 3 tables here, and we will be there to answer your questions that you may have. And also, if you attend this virtual networking time, we're going to have a raffle for all the attendees for a ribbon-branded Ogio backpack, about $100 value. It's a nice backpack. So plenty of reason to come and join one of our breakout or virtual networking tables. Once again, it's on the left-hand bar of your Federal Summit platform. You just click virtual networking and then click on one of the tables, and we'll be there once we finish this team stream here. Back to you, Bill.
Right. So just in closing, I won't take too much more of everybody's time, but I'm really grateful for the time and attendance. Really wish we could do this in person. I think all of us are wanting to get back to more normal operations, such as that they may be when things open up a little bit more. We've had some customer meetings to date, but not a lot because everybody's being very cautious, and I think it's wise to be prudent. But we hope to have a more expanded live customer summit, customer and partner summit here in DC in the coming months, probably after the first of the year. It's still a little hard to say 2021 and recognize it's real. It felt so far in the future not too long ago. But so more information will be coming on that, but I also want to do just a brief commercial before we close out about the Ribbon partner community. This summit was really designed for our partners. Again, we typically do this in DC with a number of our partners. But for those who are existing or those who are new to Ribbon, as you can see with acquisition and through development, we're looking at moving at new markets where Ribbon is really shifting as a company, and specifically in federal, is being more mission-oriented, tactical, mission-critical types of communication solutions, whether it be voice or data or a combination thereof. And so with these new markets, it really come the need for Ribbon to really look more toward other partners to help get us in those markets. So definitely we are very active. Bob and I are very active in terms of looking and talking to new partners who may be in different areas within the government. They have different contract coverage or different penetration into different agencies, both civilian, DoD, and Intel. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. So just a kind of a brief advertisement. Bob Smolin is really the go-to guy. Ribboncommunications.com is our website. We have a federal space there, so definitely would encourage and would love to hear from any and all partners looking to talk with Ribbon about the advantages of working with Ribbon and how we believe our solutions have a lot of need within the government versus our competition. So with that, again, I thank you very much for attending. I know it's very brief, but I know these kind of things, if they go on too long, then people tend to tune out and move on to other things. So appreciate the time. Thank you to all of the presenters today, John, Sam, Doug, and Mr. Marcy, and look forward to hopefully talking to you all in the future. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you at the virtual networking.